Hey, Mark, welcome to the show. As way of getting started, tell us about yourself.
Well, I think some people might know me from LinkedIn, but I've just been a sales geek for about, well, dirt.
Yeah.
It goes back that far. And I've been progressing through that through the whole time. It's just, you know, just a person who likes to talk to people and find out what they're all about and say, hey, I've got something you may want to talk about.
Yeah.
And it's found out that it's a great way to make a living too.
Was it a natural progression for you or?
No, I never really, well, it's kind of hard to say if it was a natural progression. When I finally did it professionally, yeah, it was. I started as a golf course caddy when I was 13 years old.
Yeah.
And, I was a bigger kid. I'm 6'5". So it's, I got a little bit larger as a kid at 13. I went to a golf course because they were paying you money to carry golf bags. So I started carrying golf bags for people. And then it's like, well, you want me to clean your clubs? Sure. Here's a couple extra bucks. You want me to do you? Really? So all I have to do is talk to people and offer things up. And it just kind of progressed from there. I actually, when I graduated college, wanted to be a sports producer. I mean, that was my whole big deal. Won't go through the story of why I might have changed my mind a little bit, which is kind of hysterical. You got to learn who you talk to. That was my first big. That was my first big aha moment of, don't talk to the guy like that who might hire you. So we moved through that, and I did get into the broadcast side of the business, but it was the production and creative side. And then one day I saw these people come walking through our television station having a whole lot more fun than we were having in the newsroom. And I just said, who are those people? And they said, they're the salespeople. And the hand immediately went up and said, I can do that.
Yeah.
And it just progressed from there.
Yeah. And what motivated you? Was it money? Was it lifestyle? Was it?
It was both. It was lifestyle. It was money. It wasn't a one-day thing. It's like, oh, those are the salespeople. What do they do?
Yeah.
It's like, I didn't know we could sell air. This is kind of interesting. And okay, so that's how we make money here. That's how they pay my salary. And you talk to more people, and it's like the lifestyle was much better than I was doing. I was working late nights. I was working weekends. I was working holidays.
Yeah.
I was making $3.80 an hour because, it's you get paid the glamour, that
Right.
level of the business. It's glamour. And it's just like, they make how much? Yeah, I think I need to find out about how I get into that line of work. And that's what really started it all. It's just like, it did give you the freedom. Like I said, I was a people person. When you're locked in a newsroom all day talking to the same 7 people doing that type of work, you're not really dealing with people. And it was fun, but it just wasn't the excitement I thought it would be. And the other
So,
side turned out to be a whole lot better.
so then you started selling ad space? Was that
I
the?
started selling ad space.
Yeah.
And I progressed in the ad space business up into management and then division management and the whole deal.
Yeah. And how did you like that?
Oh, it was fun. I mean, now when I did it, again, like I said, I started doing this, somewhere between fire and the wheel. I don't know which one came first.
But they had radio.
Yeah, well, they did. They might have had radio at that point. Now, you're probably familiar with Jay Jensen and see some of his stuff. Yeah. Jay and I argue who sold Jesus his first camel. So we've both been doing this for an extremely long amount of time. And it was just like, this is fun. But then it got to a point, and as you rise, and I went from kind of the local side to the national side, when you're starting to deal with the big national accounts and the national ad agency, it became more of and I don't want to make anybody upset with this, but it became more of an accounting job. I have to deliver a certain amount of rating points to meet a certain goal that this buyer had. And it was like, well, that wasn't the fun I was having before. So I got out of that business and I went into the tech business. I started working in software. And I started selling software and started going out with something new. It was something exciting. It was, I won't call it a pioneer path, but not too many people had computers then.
Yeah.
And so that was fun. Here we are, fun again. And I started to change a little bit of the philosophy. I mean, I've been already doing this for a number of years, and start to understand that being able to help people was even more fulfilling than just being able to sell something and make a paycheck that you looked at every 2 weeks and said, really? I make that much to do this?
And technology was a little bit more tangible. You could show it.
Well, sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it was. You get into starting to do demos of software, and the tangibility, intangibility part never bothered me because it was, the broadcast space was a space that was intangible when you sold air. I sold air. So it wasn't like I had to convince somebody that this is a good idea. That was already done by somebody else years before me. But the software business, that was something really new, and there were some arrows being shot into our backs as pioneers when we started to introduce that around the country.
And who were you selling the software to? Was it what persona?
Well, there were a lot of different personas. A lot of the things that I focused on. Now, the company was WordPerfect, and I think everybody might remember WordPerfect.
Sure.
So there you go. I just dated myself. We put the whole freshness sell-by date on it by saying WordPerfect. A lot of what my job was to do was going to a lot of the manufacturers and doing OEM sales. Okay. So I was going to a lot of the IBMs of the world, personal computers, and those type of companies, the Dells of the world. And it's you need to have WordPerfect loaded on your computer when people buy it. So yeah. It was doing a lot of that. So it was the purchasing people and the key tech people and the product people at a lot of the computer companies.
Yeah. What'd you do after that?
When that business got acquired, I went back into the media business.
Yeah.
But only instead of the broadcast business, it was the cable TV business.
Wow.
Okay, so there's a little bit of a difference. Cable at the time was this infant business. It was very local in nature, but there was this company that said, we have a great idea. I think we're going to cobble all of this together so that we can compete with the broadcast stations and the broadcast business on a national level. So it was a national rep firm, and I went to work for those people. I started at the beginning on the street, and the person who actually brought me into that business was one of the station general managers I worked for along the way when I was back in the broadcast business, who said, you might be able to figure out how to talk to these people. Yeah. So we went and did that. I started on the street with them. Then I became a general manager of our business in Detroit. They moved me, at the time I was living in Boston. They moved me to Detroit. And of course, that was big automotive business. We were very, very successful with that group, that team, and that division in Detroit. And then they moved me back to New York City, where I grew up and spent a lot of time to run their new business development and marketing program. So I stayed in that. I was with that company for about 8 years. There were some changes that came to the very top of that company, which if anybody's ever worked at some of the larger companies, when changes come to the top, there are some new faces that get brought in just because that's what you do. Yeah. So I got out of that business and started to work for PE companies and some venture capital companies to help commercialize some of their newer products, because yeah. I was kind of good at being able to take new concepts out, being able to communicate with the people who were the buyers of those products, and take new ideas and make them seem, well, we should try this. So it was, and to me that was exciting. It was something new. You had to figure out your way every step of the way. There was a lot of, like I said, you got hit in the head a lot. If you thought no was bad in some of the more accepted businesses, doing that, no it's just an everyday word. You beg to have a 2-year-old who said no, because they said it less than what your people you were talking to did. But it worked out well. I was able to help a number of different companies get their legs under them, grow to a certain extent. And the final one was a pharmaceutical company, which what I knew about pharmaceuticals was I was a broadcast sales guy, so you have an idea of how good my math and science skills really were, besides being able to add up how much this contract is worth. But I catch on pretty quick. We learned a lot. We were able to take a new product through and get approvals through it for the government, and we were able to sell that organization. And then I moved on to do a few other things in that same vein. At the same time, we left New York and we moved to Raleigh, North Carolina, because I was done shoveling snow. Yeah. End of story. So and then here I am now, and I'm working for another company. I'm working for a company that's out west. to help them boost their product as well. And it's a conversational sales platform, not a marketing platform, because what we do is a little bit different than what you would consider conversational marketing.
Yeah.
We're actually helping deliver sales, not just deliver the people who you might want to sell to. So it's a little bit different, and again, it's a lot of fun.
And why did you switch? I mean, I can't imagine doing pharmaceuticals. You know,
it's it's an interesting industry. It's a very staid, conservative industry.
yeah.
I mean, there were a couple other products after that were stayed conservative industries, but again, with a focus on what we were doing with that company was developing transdermal delivery systems, and that
Oh,
means
now I understand.
yeah, there you go. That just means it's just goop you can put on your skin, and it would go through the skin
Yeah.
and deliver some sort of medication to whatever the problem was without having to take pills, without having to take injections. There were a lot of health reasons for that had to deal with your liver and other things that went through there. But it was a business and industry where I had contacts in the retail side of it. And I was able to learn the prescription side of the business, working with doctors and also working with the FDA and the scientists who work with the FDA. I hired a lot of consultants. There was no way I was going to read up enough and be able to get smart enough to do that on my own. So we hired a lot of consultants that I worked with and learned a lot from them. But I'm really helping people here. I mean, this is, outside of the fact that if we succeed, we'll do very, very well. The fact is that we're bringing something to the market that people have wanted. And the pharmaceutical companies, when we went and pitched them the ideas as strategic partners and alliance partners, they would just look at us and go, how did you do this? We've been trying to do this for 20 years. And I said, I'm not the guy you ask. He's sitting over here to the right. You ask him, but first you have to sign a lot of documents before we'll tell you. And it worked out well for everybody. We did what we did. They took it, and
what do you attribute your success in sales to? What skill or ability or technique?
Listening and asking.
Yeah.
It's one of the first things that I learned when I got into the broadcast business from one of the first station general sales managers I worked for. And we've all heard it 1,000 times: 2 eyes, 2 ears, 1 mouth. Ask the right question and shut up. Yeah. And if you ask the right question and you listen, your prospect will tell you everything you need to know in order to be able to sell them whatever it is you're selling. Yeah. And to me, that was really simple.
And what type of questions worked best for you?
That is kind of the big secret. When people say it takes time and experience, you got to ask a lot of questions and find out what works and find out what doesn't. It became really funny because, especially when I got into the technology side of it, because you would reach out to people, you do a quick discovery call, and that's when everybody was full cycle. We didn't get into so much specialization that we have today, which is a completely another topic that we could probably go all day on together if we wanted to. But you would reach out to people, you'd schedule time to meet them and understand and talk to them. And the question that I always asked the minute I got back on the phone with them, because in the beginning, that's all we had. We either had phone or we were face-to-face, which was the greatest way to sell in the world for a lot of reasons. I'll go into that. But the question I always ask is, remind me again, why am I here?
A lot of people use that.
Yeah. Well, because I know why I'm there. I wouldn't be there if you didn't answer the right questions. But then they get to talk at me and say, well, you have this thing and we have this problem. And here's our problem. And it sounds like can you solve that for me? I mean, give me the red carpet right through to the close. So it's just, tell me why I'm here. Remind me again what the problem was. Yeah. It didn't bother me if it sounded like I didn't remember what I was doing.
Well, I've heard a couple people use that on me, and I'm like, well, you asked for the call. I'm here because you asked for it.
Well, you know what? You're a sales guy.
Yeah.
The people who we talk to, and there are going to be a lot of people who watch this, so I don't want to, let any cats out of the bag or say, but they're not salespeople, so they don't think the way that we think. Yeah. When I get a cold call, I take most cold calls that people send to me, or I'll answer most cold emails. But when I get a cold call and somebody stops pitching, I'll listen to it and say, well, I really appreciate you reaching out. It's not something that's on my radar screen now or in the future because of this. But let me give you a couple of pointers on how you can make your pitch a little bit better. But and clients don't do that. They just say, hey, thanks for calling, click.
Yeah.
So there's a completely different mentality of a salesperson. So
I mean, I like it because you get them talking, and how they describe why you're there is exactly why you're there.
exactly. And that was the part about face-to-face selling that I thought that a lot of people today don't have that experience.
Yeah.
Because you'd make an appointment, you'd go meet with somebody, you'd sit down next to them, and they'd show you what they did every day. Then they'd walk you around the building and introduce you to everybody else they interface with, and you get to ask them questions about what they do every day. And before you know it, you are a semi-expert. You're never going to be expert, but you're a semi-expert in their business. And to me, that's the thing that you need to know no matter who you pitch. If you don't know their business and the challenges they face from more than just a 30,000 foot perspective, it's much, much harder to sell anybody anything. If you come off and they go, wow, you do get what I do, don't you? Whole different discussion.
And that's it. And I think we have diminished the value of that because people now think transactionally.
Oh, well, that's the whole deal with SaaS stuff. And a lot of people who are in SaaS, for a good deal of it, it's transactional. I got a website, you saw my stuff, you're calling me to ask me some questions. How many do you want? Give me your credit card. For the big enterprise stuff, there is still a little bit of it. There's still a lot more of what you and I were probably used to selling. But there's still a lot more, it seems.
Right, because, if somebody's in market, the transactional thing works. But if most of the time they're like, they have the problem, they're kind of aware of it, but they're not searching for a solution yet.
No, and it's the one thing that you start to learn and understand as you move up the ranks at some larger companies or even smaller companies, startups that you grew. I've got X amount of money and I've got 12 challenges that I'm facing. The challenge that I'm bringing to you, whether you knew you had it or not, is it on that list of 12 that you want to spend your money on? Or is it something that you never thought about? And does it represent more challenge to my business than those 12 that are in front of you?
Yeah.
And that's the part that a lot of people have to understand. It's not that they don't understand that they have a problem that you may be able to be solved. You don't know what their other problems are. And there's only a finite amount of money. People just don't say, hey, let's put number 13 on the list and fund it. It just doesn't work that way.
Right. And what's even more scarce than money is their time, energy, and focus.
Sure. In the software business, the biggest challenge is, what is the cost to retrain somebody on a new piece of software? Yeah. We do have an old system. Yeah, it's a little bit clunky, but now how hard is this going to be for us to change, and what's that going to do to the morale of the people that we're working with? So it's more than just a feature benefit, or it's more than just, if you put this in, here's where you are today. This is the bright, shiny city you can be tomorrow. Yeah, but I'm going to have a whole lot of angry citizens in my bright, shiny city.
It's exactly like your phone, what we were talking about before we started. It's like, it's probably not the money for the new phone. It's like, you've got to put stuff on it. You got to relearn it. You got to.
I guess it's me becoming my father. I don't know. It works.
Right.
It works. What do I want to fix it for?
Right. Until either something new comes out that you have to have, or it stops working.
Right. Well, and of course, it's a lot different than I do things in my personal life. Because, my son and I, we rebuild cars. And, we'll get a car, we'll rebuild it. It'll be great. And go, hey, you know what? It's kind of like the old, what was the name of the show? Home Improvement.
Yeah.
Oh, let's see if we can just bore this out and get another fit. No reason to do it except you got this grin in your eye, like this is going to be fun.
Yeah.
You know, a phone, it ain't fun. It's just it's a utilitarian tool. So,
and it looks like you've done some stints in leadership as well.
Yeah.
And why'd you go into that? What you like about it? What didn't you like about it?
I got into it because it was the natural progression at the time.
Yeah.
You know, you rose to a certain level as part of the sales team. Whether it was intentional or not, and I'm not going to say I went out to be the leader, you know, people would start to come to me and say, how would you solve this problem? How would you solve, you know, everybody doesn't want to go walk to the manager because they don't want to sound as if they don't know what they're doing, or maybe they're just afraid of the person. I don't know. But they would come to me and go, well, how would you do this? How would you do that? And I would just say, well, this is how I would handle it. Does that sound like something you could do? So that started to go, and I kept doing that. And management would come over to people and go, that was a great deal. How did you do that? He said, well, Mark gave me a really good idea. Yeah. So I just ran with it. And of course, management starts to look around and go, hey, Mark, I think maybe you could do this job. And I really like the problem solving aspect of it. One, I like people. So getting along with different people of different personalities was never a challenge for me. You know, I always wanted to find out what made them tick, and not in a very overt way, but just through conversation. Yep. So I understood their personality, what got them to move, what their motivation was. But then what are the challenges you're getting? Because I'm an ADHD guy. You know, it's like I want to see something new. Oh, that's a good one. We haven't seen that one before. Let's figure out how to do that. And it just became that natural progression through there that, you know, you start on your first frontline management role and you work with people and get them to focus the right way, get them to do the things you need to do, put the process in place, and then work that out. And then you get larger and larger and larger through it. And I found that as much as I like selling to people, I even like the people development and the challenge of helping people discover how far they could go on their own, even more than just doing the flat out selling. Yeah. So it just became that natural progression into real management, as opposed to I'm just a super salesman who's watching a CRM and making sure people make all their calls every day.
Yeah. And when or what did you look for in sales reps?
Attitude, yeah. Coachability. I was, you know, I don't want to get cliche on sports stuff, but it's like, you know, if you're a great athlete, I can teach you my game. You know, you may not become an all-star, but you can become a pretty good, highly paid professional. And it's attitude and coachability. If you're willing to learn, if you're willing to take the keys, that to me was the most important part of anything. And then, you know, just would you get along? And I always got along with people on teams, but my overriding goal was, look, I'm not here to make friends. I'm here to earn a living and do my job. Okay, that doesn't mean I was going to be a jerk. That doesn't mean I was going to blow everybody away, because as we said before, I liked helping people. But I didn't really, the compatibility of, can you fit in with our team one way or the other as a professional? And are you capable of just doing the job that we ask you to do? Yeah. And to me, that's all I looked for. I had conversations. I never had silly interview questions or any of I just had conversations to just hear how a person thought, how they would react to different statements. And that to me was always the guide.
And what elements of the attitude? Just being positive and cooperative and
positivity. Motivate? One of the things I always look for was I would always try to say something to figure out if this is just a yes person trying to look good on an interview, or they did have a point of reference for something and they weren't afraid to bring it up. Because I mean, the worst thing in the world is having a bunch of people who go, yeah, I mean,
smile and nod.
Yeah, you can't progress if that's all you have on the team. You need people who are not afraid to put their hand up and say, I don't think that's the right way to go, and here's my reasoning for that. Yeah. And that's what I really tried to look for in that. That to me was the biggest part, because that's natural. And if you think there's a fear factor or trepidation to do that to a prospect or a client, when you're on an interview for a job with a person who's going to be your boss, it's like, oh man, I'm not going to, if he says the sky is turquoise or orange, it sure as heck is. No,
Well,
I don't
I
want
mean,
that.
that's a good point, because that ability to have a conversation that you're not really challenging the other person, but you're discussing it.
Exactly.
And
And
part of
to,
coachability is making sure you understand what you need to do differently.
exactly. And it's, to me, sales is nothing more than a conversation.
Right. It
It's
is.
not me selling this. It's not me selling that. It's not me trying to turn your world upside down and sideways. It's having a conversation to hear how you think. And the ability to be able to say, you make an exceptionally good point, Brian. However, have you thought about it this way? Huh? No, I really haven't. And then you have another conversation.
Right.
And then before you know it, somebody says, I think this may work for us. Or, you know, they're now part of the process. It may not be the one call close or the two call close, but they're now part of the process, and they're seriously thinking in the way that you need to have them think in order to see what it is that you're offering and what you're doing. So,
And it's rare that people can have a conversation as opposed to a monologue.
well, they're trained to have a monologue. They're trained today. They're trained to have a monologue. They follow scripts. You know, they have full playbooks. And I was, you know, and I think that probably is hurting sales more than anything else. It's a conversation. Have them understand the customer that they're selling to in their business. Have them understand how the product or service you offer fits into that business, and just let them talk. Stop with all the playbooks and all the other rigmarole that you try to put
Objection
on people.
handling. And
You're going to get objections. I mean, nobody says yes without an objection somewhere. And objections is sometimes a very bad word, because question and objection are the same thing.
they're the same thing.
They're the same thing, but are you treating that question as if somebody is throwing something back at you, or are you just treating a question as,
With
I don't
curiosity.
understand, can you just explain this a little
Right.
bit more to me?
Yeah.
And I think there's just a lot of stuff that's not being done today that was done years ago that make salespeople better at what they do.
Yeah. And have you ever made a really bad hiring mistake?
Well, sure.
Yeah.
You know, it happens. I mean, you know, I think my percentage is in the low single digits, so I'm very happy about that. But nobody is ever 100%. It just does not happen. And sometimes, quite frankly, it's, you know, it's not the person's fault. You know, it could have been just the wrong market. You try everything you can, and sometimes you just miss.
Yeah.
But I always looked at it, and I can't remember the book that I read it in, but it was obviously a book written by somebody in the military who basically said there are no bad teams, there are just bad leaders. So when I saw somebody who wasn't making it, who I thought could make it, I took that as a personal affront and a personal, like, I saw something in this person that I believe they could do this job. I'm not doing something right because this person's not doing it.
Yeah.
And so now sometimes it worked, and, you know, like I said, low single digits, you had to do something.
And there are people who just interview really well.
Oh, there are. There are. There are.
Not good at working, but great at interviewing.
Right, there are, and you know, there's a combination of all of that stuff that goes into it. But with the, you know, again, nobody's 100%, so it just goes in that direction.
And what were some of kind of the epiphanies that you had through your career? It's kind of like I mean, we talked about the questioning and the listening, where it went from this is okay to now I get it.
Well, I don't know if it was epiphany in that direction, but as I got higher in the ranks at some of the larger companies, and then I saw it again at a lot of funded startup companies that I worked for, a lot of the sales challenges that were there, and this was the big, had nothing to do with the people who were in sales. It had to do with the people who were above you who had a completely different agenda. You know, the talk that they would say was, oh, it's about sales, it's about our product, getting our market share and all this. But it wasn't. It was about some other financial agenda to get extra funding, to do something differently. And you're throwing unrealistic requirements at people who are breaking their back for you to get. And it's never going to happen because you're not honest with what they're telling them about. And it's, you know, and I see more and more of that today as the tenures of people in VP slots has gone down to 18 or 16 months now. And the turnover and the fact that you pick the percentage number. It's anywhere between like 42 and 56% of all salespeople make quota, but the company makes its revenue target. So what's that quota all about?
It's not a quota. It's an income constraint.
Besides, it's a built-in failure mechanism.
Right.
People are going to fail not because they can't do the job. It's because they were set up that way when you brought them in, and that's okay with you wherever you sit. And to me, it's
wrong.
That is very wrong. Right. You're ruining people. And it's you know, so that was probably the biggest epiphany along the way. If I had to do anything about sales organizations, making sales successful from a division standpoint or just a team frontline standpoint, are these goals realistic? And I mean, there are people who I worked for who will tell you, I lost an awful lot of political capital fighting for those sales teams to say, no, I'm not going to blow out 20% of my sales team because you want something that cannot be done.
Yeah.
I'm not going to ruin their lives. They have families. It's not my job to ruin their lives. It's my job to make sure that their lives are good. They're hitting the numbers that we have to hit in order to make revenue. And let's do this the right way.
Yeah. Cool. Hey, this has been a fun conversation. Where can people go to follow you?
Well, obviously you can look me up on LinkedIn, and, you know, my name is Mark. So it's M-A-R-C, Bodner, B-O-D-N-E-R. So you can see a lot of the things I write on LinkedIn. You can get me there. If you want to reach out to me at the office, I work for a company by the name of Site Staff Chat. It's S-I-T-E, S-T-A-F-F, Chat. You can find me, that's there. And if you get me on LinkedIn, I think my cell phone number is even in my profile if you connect with me, and I answer it. So even though it's 7 years old, I answer it.